They assumed he was gone for good, a relic of a toppled regime. Now, after more than a decade away from Libya's political stage, he has returned with a calm, deliberate presence that is forcing Libyans and the world to ask a single urgent question. What does his comeback mean for a country already fractured by militias, rival administrations, and foreign meddling? In the next minutes you will hear why his reappearance is not a spontaneous spectacle, but a carefully staged re-entry, quiet meetings with elders, appeals to nostalgia and Pan-African solidarity, legal shadows that still hang over him, and a regional reaction that has Western capitals looking over their shoulders. This is a return that could reshape Libya's future. For better or worse, for 14 years, Libya has been a country in pieces. Rival administrations, competing militias, and the steady intrusion of foreign powers created layers of authority and a daily reality defined by instability. In that vacuum, names from the past continue to carry outsized weight, and his name is one of the heaviest. Where many expected irrelevance or exile, he has re-emerged not with spectacle, but with strategy, private visits to tribal areas, discreet meetings with community elders, and messages framed around reconciliation rather than revenge. That tactical quiet is deliberate. It tells a story of patient statecraft, the kind that courts influence through relationships, not headlines. Reuters and other outlets have documented how fighting and political fragmentation still shape Libya's landscape. Libya's collective exhaustion helps explain how a son of the old regime can find traction today. Older generations commonly recall the Gaddafi years as a time of predictable services and subsidized essentials. Many younger Libyans, however, only know war and economic collapse. This intergenerational divide produces a combustible mix of nostalgia and hope on one side, and fear and memory of repression on the other. In such an environment, the promise of stability, even if ambiguous, becomes politically potent. That is the emotional terrain his return exploits. His approach is strikingly local and traditional. Rather than rallying with mass demonstrations or seeking instant foreign endorsements, he has focused on tribal councils, village elders, and small gatherings, the social architecture that still governs much of Libyan public life outside the major urban centers. In a country where tribal legitimacy matters, earning the quiet assent of community leaders can be more effective than any televised manifesto. Observers report that this grassroots, low-profile outreach has been central to his re-entry strategy. At the same time, he is consciously trying to rebrand the family name's legacy into a broader Pan-African narrative. During his father's era, Libya projected influence across the continent, funding projects, backing regional initiatives, and advocating for African unity. His rhetoric now taps those memories: sovereignty, regional partnership, and the idea that Libya should be allied within Africa rather than managed by external powers. That framing aims to broaden his appeal beyond Libya's borders and to align him with a continental current increasingly skeptical of outside military footprints. Analysts note that a Pan-African posture can convert regional sympathy into political leverage at home, yet the legal and moral obstacles are real and unresolved. International warrants and domestic sentences dating from the 2011 uprising remain part of his record, facts that complicate any straightforward political rehabilitation. In practice, however, Libya's fractured institutions and uneven rule of law weaken the immediate force of those instruments. Courts, prosecutions, and jurisdictional reach are often limited by the country's security fragmentation, which means that legal status alone may not determine political fate. Recent ICC activity and reporting on Libya underscore both the seriousness of past allegations and the difficulty of enforcement in a divided state. The regional and international stakes are high. A return to influence for a Gaddafi scion would have immediate implications for migration routes, Mediterranean security, regional diplomacy, and, crucially, control over Libya's hydrocarbons. European capitals, which once supported the 2011 intervention and continue to press for migration, management, and energy stability, are watching closely. So are other global actors who view a stable, sovereign Libya as a strategic prize. Local stability under a strong central figure could reduce cross-Mediterranean flows. An emboldened, regionally oriented Libya could also shift alignments in ways that make some Western governments uneasy. Equally important is how different Libyan constituencies interpret his return. For citizens exhausted by conflict, the promise of predictable services and order can be persuasive. For victims of the former regime and proponents of accountability, his comeback is a painful reminder that justice may be deferred. This tension between the immediate desire for security and the long-term demand for rule of law will shape whether his reemergence becomes a pathway to reconciliation or a rerun of old authoritarian patterns. His tactic of avoiding overt foreign backing is another calculated move. In a country tired of external interference, being seen as authentically Libyan, rooted in tribal and community legitimacy rather than chosen by a foreign capital, is politically valuable. It undermines rivals who rely on outside patrons and positions him as a domestic solution to domestic problems. That posture also appeals to a wider African audience, increasingly focused on sovereignty and regional autonomy. Practical questions loom large. Can a figure linked to a highly personalistic past build modern institutions? Can a leader who evokes memories of centralized control also create space for political pluralism and civic freedom? Libya's future will depend less on one persona than on whether the returning actor can convert symbolic authority into durable institutions, accountable security forces, transparent governance, and sustainable revenue management that benefits ordinary citizens, not just power brokers. For regional neighbors and global partners, the calculus is delicate. Engagement that recognizes Libya's agency while insisting on accountability, and that supports inclusive political solutions rather than transactional short-term bargains, will be crucial. Heavy-handed interference risks repeating the cycles that followed 2011. Neglect risks further fragmentation and humanitarian suffering. International actors therefore face a choice: promote inclusive processes that can integrate contested figures into accountable frameworks, or risk fueling another round of instability. Libya's present is haunted by its past, and his return forces the country to confront unresolved questions: which values matter most in reconstruction? Who gets to decide Libya's direction, and how justice and stability can be balanced after years of conflict? Whether his comeback becomes a bridge toward a new stability or a lightning rod for renewed division will depend on choices made in the months ahead by community leaders, rival factions, regional partners, and international institutions. One truth endures: his reappearance is not merely a political curiosity. It is a test of Libya's resilience, of the country's ability to absorb powerful symbols from its past and channel them into a future that honors both the desire for security and the demands of justice. Across North Africa, West Africa, and the broader continent, leaders and citizens will watch closely. If Libya can translate nostalgia into inclusive nation-building, the region could gain a stabilizing partner. If it cannot, the return may mark another chapter in the nation's long struggle to reconcile power, accountability, and peace. History is rarely neat. His return is messy, emotional, and consequential. But it is also an opportunity to ask whether Libya's next chapter will be written by outsiders, by militias, or by Libyans who unite to build institutions that survive beyond any single name. The answer will shape not just Libya's destiny, but a regional moment, and for that reason the world is watching.